Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Iron Age Book Club. What is going on, everybody? How is the chat this evening? I am surrounded by a whole bunch of smart people, so that terrifies me. But it's going to be a good night. Oh my God, that applause is far too long. Far too long. Well, I believe in the fashion that my streams go. We'll say hello to the chat really quickly, and then I will introduce my fantastic... I'm going to call them the hosts because, let's face it, I'm the co-host this evening. That's where this is. And so over on the Rumble side, we've got Chatsu. He's working on story cover pages. They'll feature new art, and he might start streaming those later tonight on YouTube and Kick. There you go, Chatsu. He is putting in a lot of work on his novel. Also over here on YouTube, we've got Talking Pulp Press. Hey, how are you doing? Eric Wag, what is going on? Paladin Dragoon Rider. John A. Douglas for the Double Dip. Redoubt Productions, hello, how are you? Stormcrow, what's going on? Blake Carpenter, how are you doing? Cave to the Cross Apologetics. And then Evely Music is also down there as well. Cave to the Apollo. I thought this was a group to club people with books. Well, I guess we could. But ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let me introduce you to the fantastic hosts of the show. Like I said, I'm just kind of the co-host tonight. I'm along for the ride. I did finish the book, so you guys can't make fun. Well, I didn't finish the short story in the book, but I finished the main story of the book. But Mrs. Katie Room, how are you doing?
Very good.
Good. How has your week been?
Pretty good.
Good. Sorry. I know. I come in a little hot. I apologize. That's just, you've been here before. You know how I do. Yes. Then we also have TJ Marquis. Good sir, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Fantastic. And last but most certainly not least, Mr. John A. Douglas. What's going on?
Hang on.
Oh God.
Okay, now I'm doing good.
Now he's doing good. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen in the chat, and for anybody else who's going to watch the VOD later, and by the way, they are multi-streaming too. We're over on Periopsis Press, the YouTube channel. This is going live. We're also going live out to John A. Douglas's YouTube and Rumble channels as well, so you guys can catch us over there if you guys would like to go over and watch on their channels. But we are here because Katie had this idea that she would gather some people together and we would do a book club and we would pick books to read. And I was like, guys, hey, I don't know what book to read. Like, I am an ignorant. And I said, so you guys pick the book. And they're like, well, Dan the Destructor looks good. So we are covering Dan the Destructor, the first book in the Barbarians of the Storm series by Rob Rhymes, also known as Talking Pulp Press down there in the chat. We are going to get into this, and I think the best place to start is the spoiler-free conversation for those who haven't read the book yet. And I will start off by letting Mrs. Katie Room take us into the discussion.
Sure. And if you guys in the chat have thoughts, let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys too. I know a lot of you guys read it.
Absolutely.
Along with us.
I think they have a lot of thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. The chat. Yeah. Never give the chat that power, Katie. At least my chat. Your chat might be friendlier than my chat. My chat's terrible. But
relevant
yes.
Thoughts. And we'll decide if they're relevant.
Absolutely. And I will be watching the chat tonight, so that way if there are any relevant thoughts down there at all to the discussion, I will be saving those over here, and some people like to super chat those as well, so we'll get to those as they come in. So yes, we are doing spoilers later. We're gonna do
$100 for the Kikomon song.
I know. Well, we probably won't do the Kikomon song tonight. We'll do spoilers a little later. We're gonna do about a 10-minute spoiler-free talk, give or take, however long the spoiler-free talk takes. So, but yeah, see, Katie, this is why you're the host tonight, because you're like, hey, chat. By the way, you should also join the discussion. I never would have thought about that. I usually beat my chat away with a stick.
Well, so when we first said we were going to do this, I showed up in your chat on one of your random streams, and everyone was like, "Hey, is there a place where we can talk about this before the stream?" And so I like launched my Gilded that I had never thought I was going to do, and made a place to talk about Dan the Destructor. So I know there are people who have finished the book and are psyched.
That's awesome. Yeah, isn't it weird how that happens? Yeah, I'm still new to that world as well. Like I still can't believe that my Gilded is doing what it's doing, but yeah. So that's really cool. So
should we just start with sort of like first blush, whether or not you liked it?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, let's start wherever.
Yeah,
So
I liked it.
I did. I did too. So spoiler free. It definitely. It reminded me of, and I'm going to pull two things that are far apart from each other. It reminded me of the television show Beastmaster. From when I was a kid. I loved that show when I was a kid. If you guys remember the 1990s Beastmaster. I didn't like the movie. The movie was... But it just... hey. I told you, I'm an idiot. Let me get... Mixed with Tango and Cash. That's what this book... That's the feel of this book. It was a really fun romp from the beginning to the end. I really liked it. But yeah, basically Beastmaster meets Tango and Cash. For a fun-fueled ride all the way through. Nice. So, TJ, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it too. I tend to like or respond well to anything where it's clear that the author has a vision and they go for it and they get like at least most of the way there. Like, this is what Rob wanted to make and he made it. So like, that works. That works for me. Yeah. I was going to say, I'm a little bit older than you. And so I'm thinking Beastmaster TV show. Beastmaster's a movie. Like it must have been a little later, I guess.
It was a little later. Yeah. Younger actors in the 1990s. I was not a big fan of the movies. I tried watching that. The technology had advanced a little bit and they turned it into a TV show. And I really liked it. I really liked it. It was, I think it was trying to ride the hype of like Hercules and Xena, the Warrior Princess TV shows.
Yeah, those I watched, yeah.
And it came a few years later. I think they were still trying. It was one of the last shows of its kind in that space. But yeah. So
those were fun. I did not appreciate those shows as much when they were out, unfortunately.
I didn't have TV as a kid, so
I
saw that a lot.
I loved them. So, John, what was your thoughts on the book? What did you?
I had a lot of chance to try and sum this up because I was actually going to try and get my review of the book. Actually, the first two books out by yesterday, and I was kind of stressing over it. And then the more I thought about it, I actually talked to Rob and said, "Well, what would you like?" Basically, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to review it book by book because they come so frequently. I'm going to do basically like a review of the first big arc. So I'm going to do like what's out now, the first 5 books. I'm going to do one big kind of long form that talks about all the books at once. And he kind of appreciated that. He appreciates every, little bit that we can give him. When I was trying to sum up the first book, Dan the Destructor, the line that I came up with was a little flawed, but a lot of fun. And that's what it really echoes to. And it was a bit of culture shock for me because for comparison's sakes, this is the book. This is what I'm used to reading. Okay. You talk about beating people with a book. I've got several weapons of mass destruction here.
Yep.
So it was a bit of it was almost culture shock in a way because I'm so used to reading such longer and epic fare and stuff that goes over many, many volumes. It almost, to me, compared to what I'm used to, almost felt like if it was any more parsed down, would kind of read like a Wikipedia article of events happening. But like I've also told other people, when you adjust your expectations going into a specific media, you can end up enjoying something a little more. You can enjoy Batman and Robin the movie going into it expecting campy, lighthearted fun, not dark, brooding, Batman we're usually used to. So that's what this was. This was a little flawed, a lot of fun, and it emphasizes the fun aspect and using the reader's imagination to build epic scenes without getting drawn into, an overly long prose or narrative. Yep. But I would say that there were some editing snafus. I don't know why. There were a lot of times I was sitting there reading going, that comma don't belong there. I don't know why, but I know it don't. And, I didn't find any typos.
Yeah, I was looking for those myself, actually, just because they're always there. It was just one of those. I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, but I haven't really noticed any typos. There
are a couple of passages that were worded a little oddly, but nothing that took me out of the story.
Yeah. Katie?
I found that the rhythm became a bit repetitive in sentence flow. There was one particular sentence structure where at one point I was like, if he does this one more time, I'm done for the night. But the story itself is so much fun, and it moves quickly, so you don't feel like you're stuck in those moments.
No. That was one thing I really liked about what he did, is he moved the story along quickly. Good pacing. Yeah. It never felt like there was a break. Well, I think the whole story takes place over 2 or 3 days or 4 days or something like that. And a lot of that is, they go to bed, they wake up, they're traveling, and then it'll jump to another character, and they're like, hey, they arrived. So a lot of the day period, he does a really good job about cutting the boring parts out, right? They're riding, and then they were riding for many hours, and then they saw a swallow arc or whatever the hell you call a freaking bird in this universe. I have no idea. And then they talked about, it's very, he did a very, very good job of managing the time in the book, and I liked that personally. And like I said, I'm not coming at this from a standpoint of a reviewer or a writer. I'm coming at this from a standpoint of a kid who had to cram the book down his throat in the last freaking day or 2 days, because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do my homework until. But no, it was Kikomon. Never ever say that in my chat again. Sorry. Sorry.
I don't know if I should look or not.
Don't look.
But yeah, the pace was great. That kind of pace is one of the reasons that I've gravitated more toward pulpy stuff lately. Because I used to only read the door stoppers. If I would go to Barnes and Noble, it's less than 400 pages. I'm not buying that. But just was kind of in that mode. But where I've been at, we have kids now, there's other stuff going on. I have to write books and try to do videos sometimes. Short stuff is great for me.
As if I can really quickly, and I want to put this out there for everybody who's watching, and for those, if you guys in the panel don't know, when I was a kid, reading was a chore for me. And by chore, I mean would get grounded if I didn't read. And so I was quickly put off of reading as a kid. I didn't like it. And in fact, full-blown honesty, the first full book that I ever finished since high school was Brian Asher's Assassin of Malkozai. Did not like it. It was a chore. It was made to be a chore. But as a dad, it was one of those things I don't want to be a dad that doesn't read. I need I want to start reading, and then I got dropped into this world. And to have a small book like this for somebody who I'm trying to build that muscle to enjoy reading, because again, it was a chore, and I've tried over the years. I really have tried. I've tried over the years to enjoy reading. Small books like this are great for a guy like me who went, you know what? I didn't like it when I was a kid, but that's not right. I've got kids that I need to teach, and I need to learn, and I need to learn to enjoy it. Perfect size to get a guy like me into reading.
Well, and pulp is great because every time you sit down, something's going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
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 it dispenses with a lot of what Razor Fist doesn't like about the fantasy genre, right? It doesn't have the bloat. It doesn't spend a lot of time on navel gazing, things like this.
Right.
Something I forgot to mention earlier. One thing that does I do kind of rub up against the wrong way is the use of present tense. And that it's not common in the fantasy genre, and it's definitely something that kind of grated on me. It took a little while for me to personally to get used to, because I'm not and a lot of authors that I really don't like Chuck Wendig, use an excessive amount of present tense, which is for example, Katie, help me out here. It's like Dan is wearing the thing, instead of
Dan walks over. Dan,
yeah.
I actually, sorry, Katie, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's actually a common thing for short stories. So it's a common thing, motif. Is that the right word that I'm looking for? So
it's for very straightforward storytelling, very straightforward. Here it is. Here's this, here's the story. And I will say, because I know we're not quite there yet, but I'm halfway through the sequel. A lot of things that might have not really worked as well for me for Dan are fixed in this. Like this, nice. He hits his stride here.
Ooh, that's good. Well, that means I need to get another book, because I actually really liked this. So, TJ, was there something you wanted to add?
It's already starting to get away from me, but I think it was, so I like the immediacy of present tense, at times. I know, a lot of people, it does rub the wrong way, and that's cool. Sometimes I can really go for it. I think Life City's in present tense. But that's one of mine. But yeah, so I pointed out in my review that, that was back in December, that I saw somewhere in Rob's stuff that he had adapted it from a graphic novel script. And so I was thinking, some of those things that came out in the prose that might strike as a little odd here and there are probably artifacts of making that transition, like the way that he attributes the dialogue is a little different than what we usually see, and then probably the present tense. But Rob can tell us if that's true or not. But that's kind of what I got out of it.
Katie,
I've described present tense before, particularly in pulp, as kind of like a that video where you're running towards the screen. Like, you guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Instead of how can I put this on? How can I explain this on the spot?
Well, it tells you about the journey instead of taking you on the journey.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I don't want to be told about the journey. I want to be taken along the journey. Is that a good way to or am I completely off?
No, that's
off,
actually
Katie?
very succinct.
So
that's a very succinct way to put it. It is essentially kind of telling you more than showing you, and the prose and presentation. Sorry, hold on. Let me get this one thought out before I lose my brain loses it. It's very straightforward, and it's very parsed down in Dan. In the sequel, there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more meat on the bone, if I can put it that way.
Nice.
I will say this, being the guy who's really I really like movie and TV, right? Movie and TV. That's what I grew up with. That's what I liked. Loved watching a bunch, especially anything kind of in the fantasy genre or even in this world. Like I mentioned a few shows earlier. Some of my more favorites growing up. I loved the Legend of the Seeker show, which I heard mutilated the books, but I didn't read the books.
It did.
But I love that show. It's a great show. But what I really like about, and I know you guys are in book form, being a movie and TV guy, present tense doesn't bother me at all. Because because here's the thing, although I'm reading a book, I don't feel like I'm reading a book. I feel, and especially because I have a good imagination, I feel like I'm watching the show. And every time I got through a couple of chapters, I was like, oh, that was a really cool episode. So that's how my brain likes to quantify things. And that's actually what makes something more enjoyable to me, is if I can quantify what I'm reading in the form of a show, in the form of a television show, which this one hit, I mean, right off the bat, I was like, oh, I could get into it because it felt like I was again, that present tense stuff, that's exactly what TV does. TV gives you present tense. So I'm already queued up for that. So for me personally, I think that that's great. Again, getting scrubs like me into the readings because it was a chore for me as a kid. I really liked the present tense stuff because I'm not coming at it from that angle. I'm coming from totally different mediums, and I need something that gets me excited about reading. And so stuff like that actually helped. That really helped me through the book.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, like I said, I don't, even if I don't care for present tense all that much, I know it has its fans for exactly the reason you just lined out. For, folks who are not usually into reading excessive amounts of books, that present tense makes it easier for them to get through a particular story and enjoy a story that they might not otherwise wanted to sit through if it was filled with what we call purple prose.
Mm-hmm. No, very much so. Yeah. So is there anything that we want to say that's kind of spoiler free before we get into the spoilers? Any final thoughts, Katie, before we get into spoiler territory?
This book has a lot of cool factors. Do we want to talk about favorite character, favorite weapon, favorite antagonist?
Go for it. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's a good thing. Good thing. Just throw out just
it's got to be the vehicle, right?
Yes, as far as weapons is concerned. Yeah, actually, no. Because I just finished it. Mine differs from that. It was fun, but mine was a little bit more towards the end. But I don't. That's gonna. My favorite weapon's gonna have to wait until spoiler territory. It's gonna have to. But the vehicle was definitely fun, and I love that character's mentality when he names things. But Katie, this is yours. Who was your favorite character?
Mine or who?
Yeah, Katie. Yes.
Oh.
Ladies first, Katie. Come on.
I liked the koala bear.
Right. Killer.
Yep.
Killer koala. Yeah. No, he was pretty good. How about you, TJ?
I'd have to say Fenric. I can't be. I mean, that's pretty easy, obvious answer, but yeah, just kind of stuck with me the most.
Right.
Classic barbarian type.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like the big friendly dude.
He's a teddy bear that'll put a sword through his enemies.
Yeah,
like that's exactly.
I always like that kind of. Yeah. A lot of my books have that type of guy in them too.
His mentality gives the whole thing way more it's way more palatable with Fenric than some like dark brooding maybe not sarcastic but sardonic talk.
When we get into spoilers, let's start with Fenric because I feel that's a great place to start because I've got a lot to say on him. I like that.
And I'll echo what TJ said. Fenric damn near. I was actually a little surprised. The book is called Dan the Destructor, but Fenric stole the show. Like he was out there in your face. He was Dan's the cipher for the audience, but Fenric is pretty much the hero. I did like. I don't want to get into spoilers or of many kind. I did like Killer the koala. That was a fun little addition. Yeah. I'm reading the sequel, and he is getting a chance to shine. It is really good.
Sir, you're coming at us with future knowledge. Put future John away. Actually, I'll take the stale position. My favorite character was actually Dan. Especially in those last few pages. And you see how his character is, and he doesn't fully develop here. Thank God I didn't see full character development. I think Rob masterfully executed that. He gave some character development, but not full character development. In that Dan, I'm like, you know what? If I'm dropped into this world, I'm absolutely, which you said, he's the conduit for the audience, right? I think that I think Dan was expertly well written. I know a couple of things here and there, and I say expertly well in my personal opinion because I really, really like the character. I don't get me wrong, Fenric's pretty good, and there's a lot that I want to touch on Fenric, which is why, because I feel like there's more to talk about with Fenric. But no, Dan was my favorite character, and how he handled the world, really good. He definitely, like, I understand why the book is called Dan the Destructor because of that, and I really, really empathize in that front. So, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for those who have not read the book, we are going into spoiler territory, and we are going to start off in spoiler territory. Katie, are you okay with starting off with Fenric and all of our thoughts on
absolutely.
Fenric? All right. So, Katie, give us the spoilers. Go.
What am I spoiling?
I don't know all of it. I don't know. You guys are the reviewers and the authors. I'm just.
Why don't you just talk about Fenric?
Okay, so here's the thing about Fenric. Okay, so here's the thing. So all right. So let me do this real quick. So for now, we are absolutely 100% in spoiler territory. Okay. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Dan the Destructor is essentially an isekai almost style book where a guy from South Florida basically gets dropped through a wormhole into a somewhat, sword and sorcery type of world. And he gets dropped in, and within minutes, he's laying in the snow, he's cold, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, he's a little blubbery because he's from our world, and this massive behemoth of a jovial personality picks him up, and this man's name is Fenric. He is the typical barbarian, ready to go hunt down the wild beasts, hunt down the wizard, and has met a fair amount of maidens in his day, although is faithful to one now. And Fenric picks him up and quickly sees something in Dan and decides to take Dan on his adventure. And Fenric, ultimately, without this character, I think the story breaks hard. Although not my favorite character of the book, definitely stole the show for two people here. But this is one of the things that you wouldn't see. You would think a warrior character like this would be more grizzled, more nihilistic, more down. But no, you see this character, he's very upbeat, very enthusiastic, very charismatic, and ultimately, really nothing can ruin this guy's day. He has a few moments of oh shit, which I actually think he says that in the book. They have a few oh shit moments, which sounds good, but ultimately, Fenric is the type of guy that you would want to pal around with on your adventure, mostly because he swings his sword and would probably save your ass more than once. So that being said, now you guys have the general idea of this story. Katie, Fenric, how does he work for you in the story? And how doesn't he work for you? Or we can start with the how does he work and let everybody go, and then we can go with the how doesn't he work. I don't know how this works. I've never done a book club.
So in my review, I talked about sort of his, like, literary wise, where Fenric sort of fits in. He's very much a pulp hero in the sense of coming out of Conan, not necessarily Howard's Conan, but some of the Conan that came after, written by other people, was much less philosophical, a lot more pulpy.
Right.
So it's interesting to me that he's not the main character. We have Dan.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about Dan too, for sure. but I'd like to hear what other people think about Fenric.
Yeah. John, let's go with you, good sir. We'll work our way over to TJ.
If Fenric is so on the nose for the barbarian trope, if he were any more on the nose, he would borderline parody. It's interesting, but I think
that was a tightrope. I felt that
Yeah.
Rob was walking a tightrope that entire time, figuring that guy out.
I think it would have been pushed into parody territory if he had given him like the tragic past or something that would obviously something was way too obvious. And someone in the chat put us that they enjoy the most competent guy isn't enjoy. That's the thing about Fenric. It's Fenric's never say die attitude.
Yeah.
That really kind of elevates him. Like, he's competent, capable, and he knows what he's able to do. He's tailor-made for the world, the dangerous world that he's in, and he understands what his role in it is. He's a straight arc character. He knows what he's there to do, and he revels in it. And he sees something in Dan, probably because we have, what was the other guy's name? Murdoch. The other guy from Dan's world, Murdoch, was also there. So he probably recognized, hey, another guy from that other world. Murdoch adjusted. Dan probably can too.
I will. Okay. I think that Fenric unknowingly, and I don't know if Rob meant for this, I think Fenric unknowingly saw the warrior spirit in Dan because he was in the army. Because that's a very big through line. And I think that I've known people who've actually had similar things happen to them with the military that happened to Dan. I think Fenric saw that warrior spirit that Dan wanted to do, but he got kicked out of the army. And it was never explicitly stated in the book, but by the time I read the ending, I was like, that's what Fenric saw in Dan. I think that he just has that innate sense. Fenric has that innate sense. Sorry, I cut across, but I had to throw that out there while I was on my mind because I would forget.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I liked him as I liked the idea of, or rather what Rob did with kind of having him set up like he could be the hero. Like for all we know, he would have saved the day regardless of Dan's arrival, because that subverts our expectations in a good way in this kind of portal fantasy. In other kind of old school portal fantasy, the dude from our world, it's like a power fantasy for us, for the reader. Yeah. We go over there, we become immediately the solution to all the problems, and nothing is going to kill us because we're the chosen one, and just all that stuff, all the variations that you can think of. So it's cool to me that Dan's not that, like, obviously he's going to get more powerful. He's got his name for a reason, and he has his part, but like it didn't necessarily have to be him.
That was something that subverted my expectations. Was Dan was not necessarily the hero of the story. He was complimentary to Fenric and helped Fenric, and neither was Fenric the hero of the story. They won, but they didn't win by Dan stepping up and being the only one who could do it.
Yeah,
which I actually thought was what was going to happen.
Sure.
I'm really so Fenric. Here's what I love about Fenric. Okay, when he's on duty, he's killing monsters. He's being just a total badass. And when he's off duty, he is all about joking, booze, beer, and maidens. Like, that's who the guy is. He's got this jovial nature about him, and he's always looking for the bigger side. The other thing, too, is the absolute amount of humility that Fenric has as a character. And that, Dan does something like a little bit right? Like Dan doesn't totally screw up. He does something a little bit, it's not a little bit right, but Dan does, he's got some good moments in the book. And Fenric is all ready to just dote upon him and be like, without you, I would have died. And he goes, no, dude, you would have figured it out. And he goes, no, you need to understand, you saved my ass back there. And he was He's all about telling people what a good job they did while still being the total badass of the story. Like, you don't see those two collide a lot in a character like that. And I think that that's why Fenric is so damn endearing.
He's also not glory seeking.
No.
Like actively trying to take away something from anybody. And that's where it would have been full parody, where he was, if he was just talking about, glory seeking and, a lot of things that kind of come natural to that particular trope. He wasn't a selfish person.
Mm-hmm.
No, he wasn't.
He's really set up well as a foil to Dan.
Yeah.
Dan is coming out of a dark place in his life, and he is met by someone who is going to pull him the rest of the way out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is not going to be just pulled out. He's going to be set on his feet and given his agency back to be in control of things, being in control of himself. He's not just competence to Dan's incompetence. He is contrasting the world that Dan came out of.
Mm-hmm.
Even I really think he's very well done.
And he doesn't belittle Dan for his for Dan's inabilities either. He encourages him to get up and try again.
But he does throw some jabs in there, calling him blubbery and things of that nature. It's all jovial in nature. It's never. Yeah, it's never means. I wanted to read this earlier and I totally got sidetracked. But Kikomon for $5 says, instead of tense, because we were talking about present tense and all that, when I watch anime, I cannot see myself in first person in visual media. But in reading, you can kind of do that. Did you mean that? So oftentimes that happens, and I was kind of alluding to that, Kikomon. When reading this book, I never saw myself in a first-person visual. I really felt that I was watching a television show. I really got the same sense when I was reading this. It's like I was watching one of those old school shows from when I was a kid. It never felt like reading a book to me, which was refreshing to me. Again, being the scrub here. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Kikomon.
I think it's clear that Dan is a reader surrogate, for sure. But not in the way that Isekai has reader surrogates. The individual from our world, right? He's not a blank slate. He's not an empty body that we are supposed to personify like ourselves through.
No, he's not.
He is his own character, but he is very relatable to our status in life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Dan and his description, I will disagree. I don't think Dan was coming from a dark place in life. I think he was coming from a very mundane place in life. Sure. And I've kind of had this thought. It's like, I feel like the mundane life is worse than, almost worse than a tragic life. It's almost worse than a glorious life because there's no excitement. It's just this middle of the road. Nothing ever happens. Life just seems to be flatlining. There's no excitement. And I really got this sense, and I could be wrong, but I got the sense that Dan was living this mundane life that was just eating his soul. A man who wanted to be a warrior, who wanted to do the things, but he had hearing issues, and so they kicked him out of the military, which I know people who have had very similar stories. So for me, I was like, wow, that's a real thing. That was very relatable because I've talked with friends of mine who wanted to go. And so I really felt that he was just living this mundane life, and because he couldn't be that soldier he wanted to be, he basically just turned into the fat Florida man. And that's what I got from Dan.
Yeah.
I saw a question in chat. Cave to the Cross said, is it fair that magic gives him strength, shapes him up a bit, or is it cheap writing? I mean, it could be either, depending on the context. I think it works here.
Yeah. It worked.
Because part of the whole deal is we want to get moving, right? We want to go, and if that helps us move, then that's what the story needs here. And it's not unprecedented either. So like, just real quick, so like, and maybe Rob has read this if he's a Portal Fantasy fan, but in the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen R. Donaldson, the main character who transports to another world, he's a leper. So he can't do anything if he's going there and staying that way. One of the first things that happens is that he eats, there's like a berry. No, that's not the berry. It's there's like this special magical mud, because the whole place is magical, and it heals his leprosy. So now he's suddenly potent where he wasn't before, and like he can do things in this world, and we can move on, you know.
Well, and there was this sense. Sorry, I'm taking over, but because I literally I probably read 3/4 of the book in the last 2 days. But there was this sense that when the magic happens and it kind of shapes him up, he was like, well, obviously the stone saw something in you, like I saw something in you, like I've been saying since the beginning of the story. So it's not like it was just dropped in the lap out of left field. Rob planned that out and put notes of that, I feel, in the story so that it didn't come out of left field. I don't know, did Katie, John, did you guys feel that as well, or how did you feel about the magic muscle toning and the ship shaping up of Dan?
I think it's just, it feels compressed because the story is short and moves so fast.
Yeah, it is definitely something that needed to happen. I thought they were going to, I don't know. I thought he was actually going to stay and train for a little while and tone up some. But, you know, how do you do an 80s workout montage in a pulp book, you know?
Right.
But I will say this, the thing that sold it for me was that he had military training. Had he not had that at all, I don't think I would have bought it as much. I'm like, wait, he's just a computer analyst from South. No, he's
Chair Force.
Right, Chair Force. Yeah, he got kicked out of the army because of an injury. I think had he not had that, I don't know if I would have been able to believe the ship shaping up.
So you feel like something was restored to him?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was
I really feel like in the story he was given the life that he wanted. He regretted being kicked out of the military. He even said it in the book. He didn't like that he was kicked out of the military for this stupid ear injury that he had. Because he went deaf in one ear. I don't know if a grenade. I don't remember if they said it. I can't remember if they said it in the book, but I feel like this was his. He wanted to be the soldier. He wanted to be an army guy. He wanted to live that life, and it was taken from him. And this world offered it back to him. And as the world started offering more and more of that life back to him, you start to see Dan kind of break out of his shell. Or that.
I think you've inferred a little more than he actually put into the book in
Possibly.
that regard.
Possibly.
The soldier in the Portal a Portal Fantasy is actually a long range. In fact, it's arguably from the start of the Portal Fantasy tropes. It's John Carter was the original Portal Fantasy and the origin of a lot of stuff. And that was, I think it's a good way for an author to put, okay, a normal person is going through this fantasy world, but a soldier is, usually considered a step up above just normie status, right? There's someone that's capable. There's someone that is, physically, mentally capable of enduring the kind of strain that you'll be put under in these kind of situations. That's a big difference between the Portal Fantasies and the Isekai. The Isekais it's a normie who sits in a cubicle all day, and then he gets to the fantasy world and he gets a harem of chicks who all of a sudden want to ride him all of a sudden for no reason.
Well, but he kind of goes halfway in between. Is that guy was a soldier, training to be a soldier, and then is no longer allowed to be. He's kind of flabby when he gets there, so he has it in him to be the soldier, right? But because he got kicked out of the military, he gets flabby, gets kind of chunky, gets fat. Now he's got some stupid desk job or whatever. And so, I don't know. I felt that worked. I felt, like I said, I mean, by the end of the book, I feel like, because again, I read most of it in the last 2 days.
Maybe I didn't pick up on that particular vibe from it is all.
Well, I mean, it'd be different readers. I mean, you versus me. Yeah.
From my perspective, Dan seemed like he was trying to get acclimated to the world right up until the very end, because he kept mentioning that it's like, well, if this is a dream, it's a pretty good one. Like, well, that bugs me as a reader, because it's like get over it and get used to it, dude. Come on, Well, I was waiting for him to kind of cross it. Like, this is real, and I'm here now. My
commentary was on the fact that, one, why the magic did what it did to him, and two, although he didn't show the most physical capability out of all of the characters in the book, he showed enough physical capability. You go, okay, well, he's some flabby dude from Florida. Why was he able to do that? Oh, because he was in the army. Although kicked out because of an injury, he was in the army. So all the magic did was just kind of restore him back to that. That's what I got out of it. I will say this. The whole "this is a dream" thing went on too long for me.
I agree. I think so too.
The "this is a dream" thing, I was like, I'm okay. I'm sorry. Everything you've seen at this point, like here's the thing. I'm always the type of person, I'm like, okay, is it like, I feel like had he would have cut the "this is a dream" thing, the chapter before it would have been about perfect for me. Mm-hmm. But I feel like he just went too many 5 or 10 pages too far with it. Is that?
I don't remember making note of that. Has been a little while though, and yeah, but I would say, I think I saw him as just kind of, I don't know, I don't think I took him seriously on that. Mm-hmm. Maybe like, yeah, he's just saying stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Katie, what do you think?
I think it was a little long. The situation fulfills a lot of his longings as a character. So maybe the references to "is this a dream" are more like, it's not just weird and out there, but it's also like too good to be true. Mm-hmm. But I agree, the references to "is this a dream" were a little long. I could have done with less of it.
Okay, so you bring up an interesting point there. Was Dan saying "is this a dream" as in like he still believed in it, or was there a transition that we missed as readers because that particular thing wasn't written well?
Almost as soon as the possibility of return was brought up, Dan said, well, maybe I wouldn't go back. Right. So that's why I throw that out there as a possibility.
I didn't even think about that. That didn't even hit me.
Right away.
Yeah.
So I could go back if I even wanted to. And that's pretty early on. That's when they meet Murdoch.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't.
I missed that.
Hold on. Maybe I can bring my transplant the family here, guys.
No, screw you guys. I'm coming back here and sitting in front of YouTube. Screw that. No. We're going to go fight beasts and wizards and crazy, scantily clad women that are just as insane as the dude. No, I'm sitting here in my basement and talking to a camera. Screw that. Like, Royce, you don't want adventure? I'm building a smoker. That's enough adventure for me. I would not do that. I don't have delusions of grandeur. I'm not built for that world.
You get a magic stone that gives you ripped body and skill.
I
always prefer when the characters don't want to go back.
I like that. It's an endearing moment.
Yeah, being realistic. Yeah, we have families. Obviously, we're coming back, but like, if you're that dude, if you're single, you're free, like,
Brutal Legend was good. Had a good moment like that. So
Yeah.
I think there was a point in that game where they asked, "What are you? Would you want to go back?" You're like, "Why?"
Right.
Especially like this moment in the game where he sprouts demon wings for seemingly no reason at the time, and he just kind of looks at us. Okay, so anyway, and it just shrugs it off and moves on. It just fully accepts it right off the bat.
That's funny. No,
Okay.
No, so how did you feel that the B characters, I guess the side character, wait, stop, hold on, back up. How did you feel the villains were handled?
They were very villainous, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He shows a lot of really creative. He didn't just like grab the monster manual and dump it into the book,
No.
right? Like the villains were
he grabbed some of the monster manual and dumped
some,
like,
but there's a lot more than just that. Like it seemed like every time we were turning around, there was another villain getting at the Necro King,
yeah,
Baal, Belial, and then
the snake guy. Who was the snake guy?
The snake guy, yeah, he was pretty cool. Like that was one thing I liked the most about the book. Is like everywhere you went, something not only was something happening, but it was something new, and it was something slightly different than before. You know, there was not a lot of what felt like repetition in the pacing of the book, in what we're presented. And it's just one really good villain after the other. And since we're in spoiler territory, I can say this: the short story at the back of the book,
I didn't read it.
is a really. Well, I'll explain. It's a really bloody tale about Zolgog, the jester albino goblin that shows up at the very end.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay, I got to read it now.
Him up, and it really helps doing that. It really helps you think like, oh shit, what is this guy going to be like in the future? And he, in the sequel, he's featured a little more prominently. And having the context of his backstory and what he is, what he's been through, and what he's like really does help elevate him as a villain in my eyes. When he showed up, I was just like, well, what the fuck? But after reading his backstory, I was like, oh, shit, that would have been a much more of a hammer drop if I had known that backstory beforehand.
But, I like that. I actually like the authors. I'm sorry, Katie. Villains. I don't want to cut you off. This was your book club. You organized this. We can't cut you off all night.
That's all right. I don't mind. I'm just happy to have people talking about books. I thought that the female villain, whose name escapes me,
Ezra Lynn.
That's why it escapes me.
I literally finished the main story like 25 minutes before we started.
I thought she was well done. I didn't feel at any point that she was a characterization or like a cheap archetype of a female, right? Like she seemed like a legitimate person to me.
Yeah.
And from the beginning you knew she was going to stab her master in the back, right? But like it didn't feel like it was overplayed at all, at least to me.
No, I felt like I'm just like, okay, when is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, when is it like, and there were like about 3 moments before, and I was like, oh, she didn't do it there. Well, when the fuck is she gonna, like, it was one of those. It's like, I know she's gonna do it. Just do it already. And then when she did it, I was like,
drop.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, no, that was really good. I liked that. TJ, how about you? How about you with the villains?
Yeah. Really with the villains, it's on that. So I like it when they're more than one and they're at odds with each other. And backstabbing each other or like just otherwise jockeying for position or just whatever. I like chaotic neutrals and just anything like that. So I appreciated that whole cast and that they were distinct and unique designs. I'm trying to remember the armor thing.
Yeah.
What was?
That was an interesting concept. Is the black iron, I believe, is what he called
there
it.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got done reading it. I'm already forgetting the names and stuff, but there are memorable moments for sure.
It's terrible. I don't have the print versions.
No. I apologize if my eating's distracting anyone, by the way.
Don't apologize. You sound Canadian.
I didn't even notice.
Sorry.
You just got to sneak
I
it in
can't
there.
hear smacking. I'm fine.
No, as long as I don't hear mouth noises, I'm good. Mouth noises are weird. Ugh. Ugh. Gives
I
me
like
the heebie-jeebies.
The multi-hell level thing.
I still don't understand that entirely, and I'm glad that I don't.
It just felt like instead of just being like a future world, it was a world that had been changed utterly. Because when like I heard the concept of it being kind of a future world, I was like, because I think our world's kind of boring. For
It expands on it a little bit in the sequel.
Nice.
That
And it makes sense.
That right there, when they said that, that was the hook for me. When Frank explains that, as soon as he got through that, I was like, done. Actually, so that was the soft hook. There was another hook after that, but go on.
I just feel like it makes it a mystery, right? Instead of being like, it's actually our world, and then all of the mystery is solved, right? Because it's our world and we're familiar with our world. It's like, wait, how did we get from here to there? And that is a pull through.
And how much time has passed, which they never went into.
Right.
And that was the soft hook for me. I was just like, okay, I'm down, but I'll tell you like the actual fish hook that got me. But after you guys, what was your guys' experience with that when you heard that it's an alternate future of our world? John or
I went
TJ?
already. So
John or TJ?
I just kind of, rolled with it. I figured there had to be an explanation for it. But I will say, I don't know if I want to, it's not really spoiling much from the sequel, because the concept that he had for the Hells is actually really interesting to me.
Don't spoil it. I haven't read it yet.
I don't really think it even spoils that much from the basic story itself. It just it's a bit of world building.
What really quick, Raving Dad Gaming, I believe there are 4 books currently.
This is the sequel.
Yeah, that's the
title
sequel.
is awesome.
Yep, there are 4 books currently. There's Dan the Destructor. As soon as Amazon loads, I will post the links down in the chat for the books below. So yeah, and then so it's Dan the Destructor, then it's Atomic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Eyes in All Shadows.
And this is an
Swords
anthology.
Again. Yep, Swords.
Rather than a continuation of the main storyline, this is a anthology of 6 stories.
John, have you read that?
Not yet.
Okay. I was just going to ask if they are as pertinent to the main story as the short story in this one was.
Not sure. But I did like the short story. In fact, I honestly thought I was a little more engaged with the short story than I was actually with the main story. The short story was it was short, but it was very brutal. It was very
Okay, now I gotta read it. I thought I was done.
It takes everything to 11. All like the language, the gore, like everything.
It's damn near a slasher flick.
Yeah.
Oh shit! That is way different.
It's a vengeance story.
Yeah.
As such, there's a lot more.
Well, I mean, it's the story of it's a clown story, ladies and gentlemen.
Kind of, but you'll see when you read it. I did like the short story, and it really elevated Zolgog as a villain in my eyes.
Yes. It was
so going into the sequel, it's a little more. He's a little more involved in the sequel, so it really did help in that particular regard. How are we going to talk about like the big fish hook that was hanging at the end of the book that Elizabeth
Yeah.
it
It
was
was
good.
just,
So no,
was-
but that's the okay. So that was the fish hook for me. So they talk about it's a future world, right? And then they're like, and then all of a sudden you find out they're like, wait a minute, you're that Dan? And you're like, what do you mean that Dan? You're like, from Elizabeth, and you're just like, what do you mean? And then okay, major spoilers here, guys. If you have not read Dan the Destructor, no, I like in it just as honestly as I can say this, get the fuck out and go read Dan the Destructor. This is a major spoiler for this book. This is where I got hooked. Okay, so I'm going 5, 4, 3, 2. Elizabeth was the love interest of Dan that he was in the middle of sending a text message to or a DM or whatever when he got sucked into this world, and then finds out that she had gotten transported there possibly hundreds of years before he did, and she was searching for him the entire fucking time. And I'm like, what the hell is this book even? That right there, I was sold. I was like, all right, I'm done. And then from that moment on, they're like, wait a minute. You're talking about like Elizabeth? And Dan is like, okay, how do you know Elizabeth? And what do you mean Elizabeth? And they're like, basically she came here. She was a great leader. She unified a bunch of people and then she disappeared. And Dan's just like, wait, so the love of my life that I was trying to DM to say how sorry I was for screwing everything up was here in this world, might be dead, might still be alive, don't know yet. But now I'm here hundreds of years later, and you're telling me she was searching for me the entire time? What a fantastic freaking plot point!
yeah, that's a
Basically,
good
this
reveal.
world just turns everybody who goes there into awesome people. if you portal somehow, either accidentally or on purpose, because it seems like Elizabeth did it a little bit more purposefully than Dan did, you will end up cool.
Where the hell do you infer that from?
She was looking for him.
Yeah, 2 for 2.
I'm going to find the passage. This is going to take me a while.
Rule of cool infects everybody that steps into the world. You know,
I'm good with that, but that was a major hook for me. I loved that. I thought that was awesome.
Star-crossed lovers is a good trope when it's done well. Time-crossed lovers, that is something else all entirely. How do you bridge? How do you bridge space and time to be with the person you love? Doctor Who did it.
I don't know nothing about Doctor Who. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not that much of a nerd. I freaking loved that, dude. As soon as they said, like, my nerd brain was just like, wait a minute. That's really cool. Like, because there's still hope. Because there's still hope, and then it's like it's not like this dreary. It's not a dreary story. It's not nihilistic. There are heroes who are just heroes. There's a fun, good time. It's so counterculture to the drab that we have today, where everything has to be over-explained. Everything has to be nihilistic. I mean, it's just, you can't, and it was just fun. It was just fun.
Notice how he sets, before that twist even comes, he sets up the notion that people from his world have come here before because Murdoch was already there.
Yeah.
Which I dug Murdoch and crew. We didn't get a whole lot of time with them in this book. They are more in the sequel. Again, like I say, guys, if you really enjoyed this, the sequel really is more of what you liked. More in depth, with a lot less of the things that felt like hangups, and it is a vast improvement. It really is. He really does hit his stride in the sequel. So
I gotta read it.
I recommend it because I'm going into this. It's a little bit longer, but I'm like, okay, this is fleshing out characters more. This is fleshing out the scenes more. This is a little more well written, and it's still keeping all the fun shit that we loved about the first book. And doing the same thing, and still does not feel repetitive.
Yeah, it brings up a couple things for me. Hopefully, I can keep them in my head long enough to get to both of them. But so one of the things I had noted is that Dan could have hung out with the babes in the beginning, but chooses to go along instead. So just a little bit of good character shown there, right? Doing something to save people instead of hanging around with the shot at pleasure, maybe.
That was good.
But so Fenric, as we said, he's loyal to someone, right? And so you have kind of like an echo between them there. Like Dan doesn't necessarily know that he's like waiting to find Elizabeth again, but essentially that's as far as I could, I've only read the first book, but as far as I can see, that's kind of what's set up there. And then what's the other thing? Yep, nope, it's gone already.
I found it.
Okay.
So the Necro King actually says to him,
Yep.
Everyone knows Elizabeth. She came here so long ago in search of you. She loved you and she followed you to this world. Unfortunately, she arrived here much earlier than you did, much, much earlier.
That doesn't mean she did it. She followed in.
Doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. But I don't. It could go either way.
It's the same kind of language is used several times.
I'm not going to argue with the reviewer.
If you don't think the Necro King is telling Dan the complete truth, you're probably smart. But Fenric says something similar, and Necro King says to one of the other antagonists, very, very similar language. So that's where I got that from.
Yeah, Elizabeth seemed like a prominent figure in the world's history, so
that was interesting too. So now the question is the little Queenie lady who was possibly worried about Dan at the end, are we going to get a love triangle where we find Elizabeth, but the Queen's kind of all about Dan? And then, like, is that a thing? I hope to hell not. But is it a possibility?
Could be. I think it depends on what he's going to do. I mean, there's still several books to go through, so it's like,
oh no, not a love triangle.
The seeds could be there.
Yeah, they could.
But I think if he wanted to just, have Dan, pal around in the brothels, he would have done that in the first book and given him like the chance to, kind of live it up the way Fenric does. And Dan seems to be a bit more of a character. He's a bit more invested in, somebody that he actually cares about. I don't think Rob would have put so many references to how much he cares about Elizabeth if he wasn't going to end up doing something with that particular hook.
Yeah. I just had to ask the question because I saw it, because again, I got to that point like 25 minutes before we started the show.
Wordsmith Whitworth has an interesting hypothesis. What if the Queen is descended from Elizabeth?
See, I had that thought too. But then that means that Elizabeth procreated with somebody and there was a love outside of Dan.
Well,
and they did mention, although they did mention in the book, well, at least in Fenric's version, that sex is kind of a utilitarian thing and not necessarily a love thing all the time, even though, he kind of started using it more as a love thing. But I mean, is that just a Fenric thing, or is that more of a world thing? Like,
you really can't take the word of alpha males on this kind of point.
I don't disagree, but there's enough there that you could ask questions. Because again, if it is a descendant of Elizabeth, then Elizabeth took another person. What does that do to Dan if that's the case?
Good question. I guess I have to read on to find out.
Because now we're talking about Elizabeth, who has lived an entire life without this guy. She was searching for him for a long time. Did she fall in love with somebody else? Did she not? What's going on? There's enough. Rob did a really good job with a lot of this. He did a really good job with.
She wanted that career first. it'll be career. What are the career? Okay, and then
God.
at a time of her choosing, take some kind of a mortality elixir so she could.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just making up stuff now.
But it did say she disappeared.
It did say she disappeared.
Yeah.
But
okay, so maybe she portaled out somewhere else.
She made history, so we know that Dan has some time, age-wise, to catch up with her, and then they can find each other.
What if the villains find her first?
Well, and that's the thing is they talked about extra dimensional travel here too. And when you start getting into time travel and then extra dimensional travel, you start to get into like time dilation mechanics as well. And how
wobbly.
Yeah. But that I think that gets way off the beaten path of this discussion.
Well, the good thing about this world is you can believe that anything is possible.
And I like that. Oh, we're in spoilers. I could talk about my favorite weapon. Oh, it makes me so happy. But what did he call it? The Tesla ball. The thing that was literally on the airship that decided to just rain down a plasma laser and basically wipe out the Eiffel Tower. That was awesome. I was just like, nope, I'm sold. I love, I don't really know Frank that well because you only got to meet Frank a couple of times. But Frank using a freaking Tesla ball to basically just rain down lightning and cause that whole finale killing one of the old gods. That was awesome. Although the big bad bitch was a good weapon. But
Royce, when there's lightning, what always brings me down.
Oh God, don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm sorry. I had to. I apologize for nothing.
Well, at least you're not being Canadian on that front. So,
I think my favorite moment was firing the missile into the Dragon Lord's mouth and blowing his head out was pretty cool. There's so many problems you can solve with a really well-timed rocket launcher.
We didn't. Okay, it's something we didn't touch on. We got to touch on this before we get going. The integration in a sword and sorcery world, and they're like, but we have guns now. That made the ending so much more plausible to me than just like two guys just like overcoming an entire army of undead warriors. No, not two guys. Two guys with guns. Not just two guys with guns. Two guys with Gatling guns. That made that ending battle so much more plausible. Also, Gatling guns mounted to an SUV. It's like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Like, you could do that. I thought that was great.
And Fenric doesn't miss a beat. He's like, awesome.
What was he shoots the gun and he's like, are my ears bleeding? Like, no, your ears are fine. He's like, okay.
I did have to admit my favorite running joke in the narrative was when Dan explains to him what a pussy is, and every now and then Fenric's like, that's your pussy talking.
That was great.
And he continues it in the next book too. So I was like, I'm gonna love every time this shows up.
That was really good. This
book is not going to win any feminist awards. Just throwing that out.
No, but it wins for that though.
Bechdel test failed.
It might be intentional.
Well, if you've ever talked with Rob, trust me, the guy is definitely not a feminist. Oh man. So, is there anything else before we go into final points that you guys wanted to touch on before we go into our final points of the book?
I will say, just kind of as a short form review, like I said, a lot of a few flaws, a lot of fun, and the rule of cool definitely helps elevate the book over some of the editing stumbles and storytelling stumbles. And having read halfway through the sequel, I can definitely say if you're reading Dan the Destructor and you're feeling like I feel like this is good but could be a little bit better, push through, get to the sequel, because the sequel is a big improvement. It really is. He definitely finds his stride in it, and I'm looking forward to reading through more of the books, so that because it feels like he's got a really good grasp of them, of all the characters in the world and everything. And now that everything's established, you can just kind of roll with it. And I'm in the middle of some really good storylines. It's not just Dan and Fenric in this book, whereas it was in Dan the Destructor. In Atomic Beasts, it's multi POVs with other characters doing their own thing, and it's getting really intense. And I'm glad I picked this up, and I'm glad I got invested in this. I don't give ratings like a star series or however many out of 10, because what I do is usually I enjoy most of what I read, and I like to kind of outline what I like, what I think people of a like mind will like about it, and then let the reader decide for themselves. But this was fun. It was a lot of fun. Remember what fun is, guys? Mm-hmm. Not a lot of bloat, not a lot of navel gazing, short, simple, sweet. And it does overcome what few flaws, I could sit there and point out. Other more snobbish reviewers might not, but that's on them, and I can't speak for them.
Yeah, bouncing off the flaws thing. So and I made a couple of comments in my review as well, which is it's on the Substack, in video form as well. But that's just part of reading indies. You are going to read, in almost every case, somebody's first book or first released book, and you just go in knowing that there's going to be some technical things that we don't have quite worked out yet, or just whatever.
It's not gonna
what are you showing us? How long?
No, I was asked how many pages it was.
Yeah, I see the comment. So if you, for the readers that are trying to get deeper into our whole scene, it's like John just said, push through, and not just with Dan the Destructor, with whatever first book, push through. And if you like the ideas, kind of turn your brain off on some of the technical aspects or whatever else, and just enjoy the ideas, enjoy the ride, get an idea or get a feel for what the author is about, and see how people grow, because they do. There's not anyone that I in the scene, pulp rev scene, Superversive, Iron Age, that I've read who hasn't improved from one book to the next. Even people I think it was Stormcrow wants us to get Kitsun Chia, I guess that's how we say it.
I know that sometime.
But he's written millions of words at this point. He writes like a monster. He's a maniac. But even him, from one book to the next, you can see that improvement. And so it's one of the cool things about reading indie is you get the raw form and you see the refinement, but the refinement is done by the author. It's not. Right. It's not enforced by the establishment editors and stuff like that.
Yeah. You, there's stuff that's not going to be perfect, but it's not been buffed all the heck. Right. The author, their actual voices there, and not the editor filing it away so that or I like to say pre-chewed, by a mother bird, right? This is going to be a real story, right? It's not been filtered by half a dozen people to make sure that every element is so easy for you to forget that you are partaking in a story. So work through that, and book 2, book 3, it's only going to get better, right?
Yep, no auto tune.
Right. That's what authors need the most. Writers get better the more they write, the more they keep going on. And what's going to keep writers and authors going forward is people who are engaged in what they have and what they're reading, what they're writing, and fans to spur them on, say, "Hey, I like what you did. Keep going," and they'll get better. They'll get better because they have an incentive to want to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see over, I believe, John, it's in your chat where the rabbit hole and Jonathan Rosignol are.
Yes.
I believe it's in your chat where they're at. I'm not sure. They're asking for a rating for the book. Guys, here's where I'm at for a book after I've already spent the money on it or bought it. And I don't actually know if I bought this or Rob sent this to me, to be honest. No, I think Rob actually sent this to me with a pack of cigars. But after reading it, that tells you how long ago. He sent this to me back in December, and I hadn't gotten to it. I'm terrible at time management, especially when it comes to reading for obvious reasons. But if you guys want to know, it's like, well, come up with a scale. How would you rate the book? I have 2 ratings. After reading a book, I have buy or don't buy. And for $13.50, this is a buy. Would I spend $35 on this? No. Would I spend $30 on this? No. Would I spend $15? I'd spend $15. I say this is worth $15. He's got it for $13.50, guys. It's on Amazon right now. The fact of the matter is my rating for this is buy. What do you guys rate it? Buy or not buy?
Oh, buy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, buy.
So where do you say it's not worth the buy?
If you're expecting epic fantasy, as opposed to pulpy sword and sorcery, then
So like $20, $25. Where do you?
Oh, I see. You want?
Yeah. What dollar?
Your metrics.
Yeah. Because that's because for me that's the most real thing that I can rate this in money, because that's what we're telling people right now. Is it worth the $13.50 he has it listed for? Personally, I say yes. This is a hell of a time for $13.50. This is awesome. You can't even go buy new crap movies from these modern Warner Brothers and MCU stuff off the shelf at Walmart for $13.50. This is a great time for $13.50.
That's more entertainment per dollar than going to the theater.
It is. I agree.
It's definitely better than the last Indiana Jones film, that's for sure.
We're not going to get into that, John. You always try to suck me into this crap. No, but
I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Last Jedi.
John? Oh, that's right. We're on your channel now, too. Damn it! We're on everybody's channel. I'm not used to this. So, Katie, thank you so much for putting this together, and thank you so much for getting us together.
Yeah, thank you guys for being willing to read with me and join up, make our schedules align.
Yes, I am assuming you guys are going to make me read another book this next month, too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We've got
private or
4. 3 more books.
Discuss that in private or out here in public or both?
I don't know what you guys like. I've got some other stuff over here. Well, and then some that are kind of disappeared right now.
I think Katie picked the book, right?
Well, she picked.
We each have a book in the pile, so
yeah, I think everybody has something in mind. We just hadn't said for sure.
Yeah. You guys will have to let me know. Like I said, I'll kind of go with the flow on this one, and I will say this: for my schedule, the shorter the better. Because if I have to cram a 400-page book in 2 days, I'm literally going to have to take time off work.
We'll talk. I was thinking about pitching this. Oh, am I backwards? Is that
Tolkien?
just myself?
Okay.
No, yeah, I have my copy of Lord of the Rings somewhere. We'll have to get to it, but.
Can I recommend something a little shorter by Tolkien?
Can we go with Iron Age, people? Can we? Is that a thing? I've got. I've got McCoppin over here. I've got Haley Starbad Kitty. I'm working my way through the first Star Shatter book. We've got more McCoppin over here. I happen to have Star Warrior by Donovan Walker, The Perils of Sasha Reed, The Wizard's Stone by The Hedge. We call him The Hedge. He's not Herman P. Hunter here. He's The Hedge. And then I've also got this guy's book, but I feel like it would be really bad to have him comment on his own book.
That's a fantastic one.
I mean, you know.
He's like, I think it's pretty good. But we'll definitely.
This is my next read, Anthony Harris, but he's a bit of a chunky dude right here.
Go easy, guys. Ease me into it. Good God. What was that?
We can find some more 50K, 40K word ones.
That'll be all right.
We got so much.
I'll survive. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Iron Age Book Club. Thank you so much to Periopsis Press, TJ Marquis, and John A. Douglas. Guys, their links are down in the description below. Go subscribe to all of their channels and see the fantastic conversations that they have over there. And guys, if you're over here on A Drink with Crazy, thank you for watching. If you guys are over on any of their channels, thank you for watching. And never forget, every single Friday, we've got Iron Age Nights. And tomorrow, we've got a hell of a guest. So, thank you everyone for being here. Oh, good Lord. This song goes on for a while. Everybody's all bored. You guys are all quiet. Usually my outros are a lot more talkative. Good night, everybody.
I was thinking about that, but then nobody said anything.
I know. Well, I was taking a swig of a beer.
I'm gonna drop a gamer word.
Don't drop gamer word. Wait until we go Rumble only, good sir. This was really fun. I am gonna have to check out that short story now, and I'm gonna have to buy the second book. This was really good. If the second book gets better, it's worth it.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I'd like to grab it. The title alone.
Yeah, it's great.
Title's my favorite.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here, and until next time, cheers, everybody.